And one of the main things that I discovered is the dangers of silver amalgam fillings and how every single filling contains the super toxin mercury. About 55% of every filling contains mercury, and that mercury goes from organic mercury in that tooth and it vaporizes as the person is drinking hot beverages, brushing their teeth, grinding, and it vaporizes, crosses the blood-brain barrier, and gets locked in the brain, the hypothalamus pituitary. And he's explaining this, going over all the research, going over his story, which was the story of mercury poisoning. And then I thought, whoa, I have 8 silver fillings in my mouth, and they've been in my mouth since I was a kid, 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Could this be the reason why I feel so off? And that started a journey for me where I found a biological dentist. That's very important. I found the right dentist to perform safe amalgam removal. I had 2 appointments, got 4 removed on one meridian, and then another 4 removed on the other meridian. That was the first step. And the second step was, okay, now that the mercury is gone from my mouth, I need to get the mercury out of my brain. And that set me on the journey to learn how to detox the mercury out of my brain. But it wasn't until I started to actually go upstream and remove these heavy metals, then I started to feel incredible. And that was in 2018. I feel like my health is getting better and I'm feeling better year after year. And then just on top of that, I discovered at the same time back in 2018 that the house I lived in had black mold too. So I was being hit with mercury. I was being hit with nasty black mold. So I had to detox. Well, I had to get out of the house. First of all, I sold the house, but I had to detox the mold and the mercury, and I'm still going through it. You know this, Sarah. We're always retoxing. We live in a very toxic world. So detox is not a thing you do once and you're done. Something that's a continuous basis, unless you're living in the middle of the woods, because we're going to be faced with toxins no matter pretty much where we go. So that's, so important. So to a lot of people who are eating clean, they're doing intermittent fasting, and we love keto. We love fasting. Those are great tools. But if you're not getting the results you want and you're doing all those things, you got to explore a toxicity issue.
Yeah, so much to say there. And I'll tell you that when I was on my health journey, I was tested for heavy metals because not only do mercury and lead create brain fog and all of these other issues that you mentioned, they make you crazy. There's a thing known as lead toxicity making you crazy and people becoming really out of whack. So
Mad Hatter's disease.
Yes. So I got tested, and my levels of mercury, lead, and aluminum were off the charts. I live under a flight path for the airport. And so I've got jet fuel just dropping over me. And even when I was in my childhood home, I lived under that same jet path. So for the last 47 years, minus the 4 or 5 years I was in college, I have been living under the jet path. So I have had to detox from severe metal toxicity, but then you add in the radiation, the smart meters, the Zooms, the smartphones. Do you realize, Ben, it's so crazy to think that 20 years ago, smartphones weren't here. And now they're just part of our appendage, right? They are literally a part of our arm. And that radiation is so toxic and no one thinks about it because it doesn't look like anything. But with these heavy metals, it can slow down your thyroid. The thing that people don't realize is mercury is particularly toxic to the thyroid. Lead, mercury, all of these heavy metals have a positive charge. So where does iodine come in? The acceleradine has a negative charge. So when you talk about negative and positive, they attract, they combine, it binds them together and then takes them out of the body. And so it helps remove them much quicker. And then when you're fasting, and I'd love for you to go into how fasting on its own helps clean up and helps detox the body.
Yeah, and you're exactly right about the mercury. It has an affinity for the thyroid, and the mercury is like the canary in the coal mine, right? Back in the day, they used to use canaries in the coal mines, and if these canaries started to drop dead, they know there's a gas leak. Get out of that coal mine, because they didn't have the technology to detect the gas leak. And the thyroid is kind of like that canary. It's very sensitive. First symptoms start to manifest, and unfortunately, you know this, Sarah, Most doctors miss it because they're looking at TSH, and that has really nothing to do with thyroid health. It's just showing you the communication. They're not running full panels because their treatment is the same. So why would they do any extensive testing? So there's estimated 20 million people walking around with thyroid conditions. They have no idea. And a big
Yeah.
part of it is, of course, the imbalance with the iodine, as you mentioned, and also mercury eating up the thyroid. So with fasting, fasting checks the box on pretty much every health benefit we're seeking. I call it nature's reset button. It's one of the best ways to tap into the innate intelligence, the inner physician that God has put inside of our body. There's nothing external that we need to heal. It's really internal. It's our job to remove the interference. And with fasting, what an amazing way to remove the interference. When you eat food, it takes a lot of energy and blood flow and resources to digest food, from the healthiest meal to fast food, from a snack to a full on meal. It's taking a lot of energy. So when you remove that from the equation and you're in a fasted state, now you have all this energy being diverted towards healing. The innate intelligence, the doctor within your body could go to work. So in terms of what it does for like cellular health and cellular detox, the innate intelligence thinks, whoa, 17 hours into a fast. That means we're going through a famine. The body doesn't know about Uber Eats or DoorDash or the supermarket. Automatically goes into this old school wiring, kicks in, where it thinks it's going through a famine. So it raises these hormones called counter-regulatory hormones that run counter to insulin, glucagon, noradrenaline, cortisol. The sympathetic tone is activated. So it's pumping the body full of energy, helping the brain stay alert by helping the brain produce brain-derived neurotropic factor. And it's doing all of this because it wants you to stay awake, energized, and alert so you could go out there, hunt and kill, and stay alive. Again, it is a know that we could eat food whenever we want. We're blessed to do that here in America. So we could use that energy just to feel good. And then it goes a step further. It starts to look for cells that are not functioning well, cells that are senescent cells. They're called zombie cells that, they're just kind of sticking around, but they're not giving you any benefit. And they're kind of recruiting other senescent cells. They're really bad for the environment. They're bad for the neighborhood. So the body looks for these cells and it says, okay, first let's try to repair the cell. Let's try to repair the mitochondria membrane. Let's try to repair some of the processes within these broken cells. And if it determines that this cell is completely dysfunctional, there's no way we could fix it, then it goes a step farther and it signals apoptosis, which is programmed cell death. And then it goes a step farther. After it gets rid of a cell, it creates a new stem cell. And that stem cell could be used for your liver, for your heart, for your kidney. The innate intelligence will determine where it would use that new stem cell. And all of this is happening without you having to think about it, without you having to spend any money because you're fasted, and you're actually saving money because you're not spending money on food. So fasting, it checks the box on so many health benefits that we're seeking. It's one of my favorite ways to harness the innate intelligence.